know, it's
there we go. No, this is a whole new experience for me.
it's good.
All right. In 3, 2, 1. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Wells Tech. This is episode 552, recorded on June 7th, 2018. A show about technology and ministry and where those two intersect. And not only are we recording on a Thursday, but one of us is recording from a brand new mobile recording studio. Hey, Sally. That would
Good
be
morning.
the person I'm referring to.
Good morning,
New
Martin.
day.
Yeah, I'm coming to you from Mary D, the RV, as we are 8 days out from going live with our location independence crazy idea. So
you've got to orient, for those of you that are viewing, you have to orient us a little bit. Where are you in the RV? You're not behind the wheel. I'm pretty confident, and it's
yeah, I
not
don't think you'll
moving.
find me there very often at all. No, actually, believe it or not, I am in the bedroom of the RV. One of the things we liked about Mary D, she's an old RV as RVs go, but the concept of remodeling or renovating was pretty easy to do because the people that had it before us had kind of changed up the bedroom already. We gutted the whole thing, and what you see behind me is actually our bed. We built a Murphy bed, a queen size Murphy bed. So our desk folds down, our bed comes down at night, and then folds back up for work. What's cool about it is we really wanted to have the stand-up desk option. So I'm actually standing up, which maybe will make me a little more sharp for Wells Tech Podcast. Who knows?
If that's even possible.
Oh,
Yes.
it's possible.
So tell us a little bit about your setup. Has anything changed other than the stand-up desk portion?
Well, equipment-wise, I'm using almost everything the same except for my internet connection. And for the internet, I'm actually using a mobile hotspot. Today on the AT&T Netgear Nighthawk hotspot, and I have an extra MIMO antenna connected to it to get some better signal coming in on it. And I'm really happy with what we're getting here. We have the option to use either Verizon or AT&T. We're paying for both for hotspots, and testing, which I think we'll have to do at every location we move to. We found the AT&T to be smoking fast, and I was a little worried about the video, but I think video quality is really good, so I'm excited.
I would concur.
Excellent.
Concur. So where is Mary D physically?
Mary D is right outside my sticks and bricks, they call it. Our house here in New Ulm. We are still transitioning, but next Friday is closing day, so we will be completely downsized and location independent as of June 15th.
Semi-location independent. You still have to, you live in the same
true
rectangle, right? Wheels,
yes,
right.
I think it's about 280 square feet. Yes.
Okay, so your own little tiny house.
That's right, on wheels.
On wheels. Well, congratulations, you're getting there.
Yeah.
So different kind of podcasting setup. I'm still in the same old location, although I wasn't here most of the past 7 days. I was down in Austin going to a workshop and visiting my son in the process. So kind of did a double header there. Glad to be back, although it was nice. We always love going to Austin, Texas. Kind of a neat place to visit. I don't know if I'd ever want to live there. Traffic is horrendous and temperatures were above 100 the whole time. And, many other reasons why, Austin wouldn't be a great place for us. But maybe in your travels, you can get down there. Just make sure you've got hopefully you've got some air conditioning in that mobile home there.
We definitely have AC. Going to be counting on it.
Got to worship with the people at Holy Word in Austin. Awesome. And that was neat. And saw Julie Wheatsky, who we don't see too often. She works remotely, similar to you, Sally. And
right,
Tom
from
Wheatsky
our communications.
used to work on our team as well. So awesome. It was nice to see them.
Yeah, that's great. Sounds like a good time. We'll be anxious to hear about that workshop you attended at some point too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll get into that later.
Good.
All right. Well, speaking of podcasts, that's kind of the topic du jour, the topic of the day. Every once in a while, we run across another Wells podcast. I wouldn't say there's a lot of them, and maybe there's many that we aren't aware of, Sally, but when we find one, especially good ones, we try and highlight them, get them on the show. And actually, we've made a whole show of podcast today, and the Gird Up podcast by teacher Charlie Ungemacht was one that we ran across, maybe a month ago, and we invited Charlie on the show to talk a little bit about what the Gird Up podcast is all about. Since he's a teacher, we had to wait till, and that's fine. We waited till school was out, where he had a little bit more time to talk with us. And he sat down with us for about 15 minutes and shared his experiences with podcasting as a public, somebody in the public eye. And it was neat to kind of hear his perspective on both the technology, but also the content. So let's take a listen or a view of Charlie Ungemacht and the Gird Up podcast. Back in 3, 2, 1. First of all, thanks to Charlie for taking a little bit of a break from his recovery time from a hard year of teaching to talk about his Gird Up podcast. Interesting concept, and he does a nice job with it. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I love his attitude and how he kind of just did it. He thought about doing it and he just went for it. And I think that's a great way to get started with podcasting or blogging or any ministry effort you want to undertake. Don't let the fear hold you back. Just try it and learn as you go.
Inspirational, I think, to people. Charlie would be the first to admit that he was not a tech savvy guy, somebody that you'd maybe have as your tech director at school, but he had an idea of a ministry that he wanted to do outside of his normal responsibilities, and hopefully God is blessing that. Seems like it is being blessed, and I think inspirational the fact that if Charlie can do it, and I think he said this, anybody can. The techniques and the tools have gotten a lot easier to use. So I think the hard part is finding that concept and dedicating enough time and sticking with it.
Definitely a challenge there. We've talked to people through the years. We do our own podcast of things like daily devotions and Through My Bible, things like that. We've talked about Your Time of Grace, which is a video podcast. Got to have a lot of effort going into that. I think it comes out every single weekday. And there are others out there. I think just from Holy Word in Austin, there's A Reason for Hope, Pastor Don Patterson. I think he does a radio show and they turn it into a podcast. So lots of ideas and people out there doing it. And maybe one good way to get started is just to listen to some of them or watch some of them and figure out things they're doing that you like, and let that be a guide for how you might structure yours or begin to communicate using audio and video and the web.
Summer's a good time to experiment with that, play with that. You might have a little bit more time than you might have during the church year or the school year. We'll put some, links in the show notes to, some of these podcasts that we follow and look up to a little bit. There are some tools, as we mentioned, that are requirements. So if you're just totally unfamiliar with how to record audio and video, and that's going to be a learning experience, of course, but the tools are out there, and many of them are free. Audacity for the audio side is one that we would recommend. That's what Mike Hintz uses to record the daily devotion each day. So if you subscribe to that or have listened to that, he uses Audacity and a decent microphone. You can use built-in tools, on the Mac too. GarageBand is, I think Charlie, if I remember correctly in the interview, I think that's what he uses, GarageBand. There's Adobe Audition. Some of these tools have more features than others, and some of them have some cost associated with them. But I think in general, most of these tools will do the job for the average, podcaster, unless you're, going to take it to the next level. So I think the technical stuff is not necessarily in the hardware and getting the audio, but getting it published, right, Sally?
Yeah, definitely. You want to have some way to communicate that. And Charlie shared his methodology. He uses that site Pippa that we talked about during the interview. So once he has the audio file, he publishes it to Pippa and then puts the links and promo material on his Facebook page. So he doesn't really have a blog that he's publishing to or anything like that. It's more the hosting of that audio file, putting it out in the cloud so you can share the link with people. And then he's using Facebook to do that sharing. So, and once it's in the cloud, you can also share the link within the iTunes directories and things like that. So I think maybe Pippa did some of that for him by using their service. So we personally use a blog. We use a WordPress blog for our Wells Tech show notes, but we also use a WordPress plugin called
PowerPress.
PowerPress. There it is. I was looking for the word in front of me. PowerPress. And that actually pulls the links into our blog post and puts them in the right format. I think you have to use enclosure tags and things like that in the XML. So PowerPress does all that heavy lifting for us on our Wells Tech blog. And we'll include a link to that WordPress plugin if you want to look into that.
Yep. But a real important part of this process is getting the word out, publishing this into channels. And Sally, you live and breathe that every Wednesday, Thursday time frame as we do this weekly. Tell us a little bit about what you do to kind of get our show out on the internets.
Yeah, we have several different social media channels that we're a part of. So once the show is published, I immediately publish promo material and the video on Facebook and Google Plus on our channels, our pages there on those platforms. I also post the video as well as a link to the show notes page on Pinterest. So I pin the episode on Pinterest in a couple of different ways. And then finally, I tweet about it and I want to say, and post it on Instagram. We love Instagram. So I also post the show on Instagram. So 5 different channels every week where we're just basically sharing the links to the shows to make people aware that something new is out there. Now, obviously, they could be subscribed to us on iTunes or on Stitcher or wherever you get your podcast, and they would get it in their feeds from that as well.
So just on average, just to kind of give our listeners an idea, how long does it take to do that sharing exercise for you per week?
I would guess 15 minutes or less, maybe 10 minutes or less.
And you use a tool too. You use Ripple to help you, right?
For a couple of them. I use Ripple for Twitter and Instagram. But I manually post to Pinterest, Facebook, and Google Plus. Mainly because I want to get the video included and different things. So I use a combination of things. I like the promo pictures on some places. I like the video on other places. So it's a combination, but like you said, it doesn't take that long, maybe 10 minutes to do all 5 of those places.
Plus, our video goes up on Vimeo and YouTube, so they've got inherent subscription models too. So if people subscribe to your Vimeo channel or your YouTube channel, you'll get it there. And then ours gets up on wells.net, of course, too. So
if you do all the work to produce this great content, you want to make sure and get it out there where people can consume it where they're most comfortable.
Yep. You got to get the word out. So, so we're not going to go into a lot of detail on any of that stuff. We just kind of lightly touched on that, but there are some great guides out there. You can do a Google search, and then we'll also put a link to a couple of those guides as well. Lifehacker has one, and there's somebody, I don't have it in front of me, Sally, from EO Fire, just did a bang up job with screenshots and everything on just kind of the how-tos of basic podcast publishing, lots of good links and those kinds of things. So the calls it the ultimate guide to podcasting, and gets into some of the nitty gritty details of both content creation, and then does a little video, YouTube video for a bunch of the segments. So does a nice job. So we'll put those links in the show notes. And like I say, don't be afraid of trying something out. There's no harm. You've don't need a lot of financial investment to kick the tires on this, but the ability to do this is within your grasp.
Martin, I just had a thought of turning back the hands of time. The first time that I podcasted was with my husband and my little boys, and it was probably around 2005. And that's how we learned about it. We just made recordings with our kids and published them for our family to listen to, So no fear, just go out there and do it, and see where it leads you.
Yeah, as Jason Schmidt mentioned last week, if you haven't listened to last week's show, he mentioned that as a possible end of school year activity. Just have your kids develop or record a podcast, some kind of format, and you've got all the tools there. It won't be, high fidelity, but even with a Chromebook, you can record an audio podcast and get it published. So the barrier to entry is pretty low.
Definitely.
Sally, let's move on to our news. Again, thanks to Charlie for joining us. I was neat that he would be willing to share that with us. And if you haven't signed up, especially if you're a guy, Gird Up Podcast is the place to go.
Definitely.
All right, news and tech. Big week last week for Apple fans.
Yeah, and we have an article that we want to share that talks about all the things that came out of Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference 2018. And they call it little things that add up, especially in iOS 12. So a new version of the mobile operating system on all those iPhones out there is coming out. And there weren't jaw-dropping moments, apparently, at the Developers Conference, but things that kind of tip their hat to important things that are going on, like fighting phone addiction, where you can actually use an app that's built in now to limit your screen time or limit your kids' screen time. Kind of a double-edged sword there, because they want you to use those screens, obviously. And so they also enhance the FaceTime group calls. So you can have up to 32
people at a time.
Yeah.
Can't remember the last time I was yearning for a FaceTime with 32 people, but at least it's good to know I can.
Yeah, definitely. And then finally, there's some information in the article about augmented reality and how they're really putting some serious development behind augmented reality. They feel like that's going to really grow and boom. I was interested in the numbers quoted. Consumers are expected to buy 22 million VR and AR headsets and glasses this year. In 2022, just a few years away, the number should soar to 120 million units. So that's a $10 billion market there. So they're spending some money. They didn't really talk a lot about VR, the virtual reality concept, but focused more on augmented reality and adding things to what you're seeing right there in front of you. So should be interesting.
One thing you didn't mention that's also in that article is an upgrade and this is not out yet. This will probably come out late summer or before fall, before the next iPhone gets released. But one thing is an upgrade to Siri and her, I guess you could call her, integration with something called Shortcuts. If anybody, and I think I've maybe mentioned this on the show before, there's an app, or was an app, called Workflow. which is kind of a scripting app on your iPhone where you can put different activities together and automate, opening up a tip calculator and putting in 20%, those kinds of things where you can chain different events. And that seems like what Apple, when they bought Workflow, did to make this happen, and then slap Siri on the front so that you can custom create Siri commands, make her a little bit smarter, at least smarter the way you want to make her, to do things that you want to do. So open up a podcast and play Wells Tech. Open up your podcast app and play Wells Tech. Might be, a script or a shortcut that you could make and ask Siri to say, hey, play Wells Tech, and she'll know what to do. So I'm eager to see what that looks like and how well they implement that. But that was one thing that they demoed as well.
Excellent. There's some news in tech around Bible software as well. So something a lot more ministry related. And that is related to Bible Works. So Bible Works has been around since 1992, 26 years they've been in the market. And unfortunately, they are shutting down as of June 15th. So you want to head over to BibleWorks.com to get all the details. They're going to continue to support the current version, and you can actually still buy the current version at a reduced price if you want to get in on BibleWorks 10, I believe it is, before they shut down. But they are discontinuing development on the software, and really encourage you to get a good copy of it and store your software key somewhere, because they're not going to answer any support contact or anything like that. So sad to hear that news. We actually got that message from Pastor Steve Daly, who serves over in South Haven, Michigan. And he said, very sad news just came today. This is why I prefer open source software. There's usually a way for a software project to keep going when it's open source. Somebody may be willing to take up the gamut and run with it or whatever, but not the case apparently for BibleWorks. It will be shuttering. The date is June 15th, so next Friday.
Yep. All right, let's move on to news in Wells. Wells Now.
Oh yeah, there's always things happening in Wells as well. And a couple of things we want to mention here. Let's see if I can do a screen share and coordinate myself here. One is a brand new Facebook page just shared by our Wells Missions area. So we are encouraging you to head over to facebook.com/Wells Missions and like the page to keep up with events and news from home and world mission fields. Lots of inspiring stories there and other content they want to share with you. So check it out. They just published this on June 4th. So you're hearing about it right at the beginning of something exciting happening on Facebook. Awesome. And then one other thing to mention, and that is the upcoming event, Wells Night at Miller Park. That is happening August 3rd. That's a Friday night. And we have the ability to get discounted tickets. There's information on the wells.net website about discounted tickets, as well as ordering a $5 t-shirt. You can even print a poster to display in your congregation if you want to get a group together from your church or whatever. Tickets prices are from $9 to $21 for the Brewers that night. And I wonder who they're playing. Does it say it here?
Rockies.
That's right.
Colorado Rockies.
Colorado Rockies. So August 3rd is the date, but the deadline is approaching, I want to say end of July for the t-shirt orders. They're only $5. So yep. Show your Wells colors.
It's a great deal. And the Brewers are very good this year. They are in first place and exciting team. So
hopefully that'll still be the case on August 3rd.
Right. Yeah. That would be a good sign. All right, let's move on to our tips and or picks of the week. Sally, what's your first pick of the week from your new home?
Brand new place to pick. I am picking something from our friends at TechSmith, and actually it stems off of an article that they posted called 50 Tips for Better Video. And so they actually list 50 different tips. There's categories, preparation things where they talk about everything from getting feedback, storyboarding, all kinds of stuff. They've got audio tips, they've got video tips, they've got editing tips. And what I'm excited about is they put it all together in this PDF infographic. So you can see all these tips. If you want to read more about them, head over to the blog article. But I think this is just a great quick read on lots of things you can do to improve your production quality of any video projects you're working on. So definitely check it out. TechSmith is behind the software for Camtasia Studio, which is a great video editor, as well as Snagit and Jing. So they got lots of experience in regard to video production, and this just ties it all up in a nice package for you.
Very nice. My pick of the week is a book. And this book, I searched the Wells Tech archives, and I think back in 2011, this book came up. Maybe Gail Potratz, one of our former co-hosts, brought this book up. But I've been aware of this book, and I've read it a number of times. It's called A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink. It's a New York Times and Business Week bestseller. It's got some age to it. It's 2005, I think, initial publication. Pretty quick read, only 294 pages. It's not on audio, on Audible, which is how I listen to it. Only 6 hours, and if you do it a time and a half, it's less than that, which is kind of how I do it. I've read it. I'm on my third reading, I think, of it. I like the book. It's called A Whole New Mind: Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future. So it's a book about right brain, left brain activity, and I read it because it's a book that is referenced in Presentation Zen by Gar Reynolds, which is my text for the class I teach, Dynamic Classroom Presentations. It's not required reading for the class, but it's suggested reading, and it really does a nice job of kind of clarifying left brain and right brain thinking, and how important the right brain is, which is that more creative side, that more abstract side in the process of education, and in my case, in my specific use case, slide design or creating presentations, dynamic classroom presentations. He makes a great case that a presentation is not just a static academic exercise, but really needs some creativity to truly get the message across. Talks about things like design and story and empathy, and there's 6 aptitudes that he talks about that are really important to apply to any creative process, and that's no different for the creation of a slide deck. So the research, it kind of reminds me a lot of Malcolm Gladwell's approach. Does a lot of research, has a lot of science to back up his hypotheses. And I think anybody who maybe is a left brain thinker, but I'm thinking of principals in particular, is primarily left brain, but has right brainers working with them, for them on the same faculty. This would be an awesome read for them. Summer's a great time to do this. Just, I think, a good book for anybody in education, but anybody kind of trying to figure out how to kind of engage both sides of the brain. So quick read. It's available Kindle, hardcover, paperback, audio, even on a good old-fashioned CD, if that's your media of choice. So this is a book by Daniel Pink, A Whole New Mind. Excellent read. Take some time out this summer to maybe give it a read if you haven't already.
You know, I'm sure many in our listening audience do presentations quite often, Martin, and also probably have the opportunity to watch or be part of people's presentations or attend presentations. And I can think of people that really stick out in my mind as people that I relate to when it comes to presentations, or that really touch me with what they're saying. I get it. I appreciate their style or whatever. And some of the concepts in those books, I would think, or that book, would be some of the things that are coming into play subliminally or whatever as they're designing their presentations. So probably set you a notch above if you have those things in mind as you're doing your work.
Yep. Just a good thing to think about, to be conscious of and intentional about. So, all right, let's move on to our ministry resource of the week.
And I based this on the time of year. I came up with a ministry resource that's related to our Wells yearbook, the online version at yearbook.wells.net, available on mobile devices and on computer screens, laptops, whatever you're accessing it, you can get to yearbook.wells.net. And I want to specifically point out the organizations tab, because on that tab, you can find a church to worship at when you're traveling on your summer vacations or whatever it may be. And just a really powerful search tool with a lot of nuances that maybe people aren't aware of. The first one I want to point out is that it has a box for using your current location. So you don't even really have to know where you are to find a Wells church. You can just click that box, perhaps with your smartphone, when you're vacationing somewhere, and it asks probably the first time if it can use your location, and then it bases its search off of your current location, and you can put in how close to that location with the proximity field here. It defaults, I think, to 20 miles within that location. Then there's the ability to filter. So perhaps you're just looking for churches, or you're looking specifically for churches with sign services or something like that. You could filter if you wanted to. And then all you have to do is click the search button, and you get results of Wells organizations within that search radius of whatever location. If you don't use my current location, you can certainly put in cities and state information, and it'll search anywhere based on that. I didn't filter it to just churches, so I'm seeing ECM and LES, or early childhood ministries, and Lutheran elementary schools, Lutheran high schools, college, everything in my search. But if I find a church I'm interested in, I can just click on the link of the name, and there I find all kinds of great information. I can get their contact information, phone, email, their website. I can find out about their worship services, and also there's little icons available that tell me if they're handicapped accessible, if they have hearing loops or sound enhancement equipment available, if they have sign services. It'll even tell you service times if they have that saved with us, if they do it on a regular basis. You can find out where they're broadcast on television, radio, or live streaming, and other information. There's even a link to get directions. So if you use that link, it takes you over to Google Maps, and it'll plot where the location is. And then you can use the directions button available to you to put in your current location, and it'll show you a map of how to get to the church in question. And that's exactly the route I take to get to St. Paul's Church. So Google's pretty smart about that.
Yep, and you even now saved a step. You don't have to go from the house to the car.
That's right. The car, so. Just drive this 40-foot RV over there and find a parking place. Yeah, right. Exactly. I want to go back, though, just one screen where everything was listed when you get your search results. And I just want to point out one icon you may not even be aware of. It's up in the upper right of the search results, and it looks like a little marker on a map. And when you click that icon, you can actually see all the search results plotted on a Google map. So you're basically getting a Google map with all the different organizations marked on it. And I can zoom in on the map and see more detail where things are located. Or I can actually zoom out, and magically, this is like a bonus. I'm not just getting the locations from my search results. I'm getting locations all across North America, basically. So we actually have a Google map out there that has all the different locations in North America plotted. So you can use this map to zoom into any area and see where you can attend a church, or where you can find schools and those kind of things. So just a cool component to the online search that I think people who are traveling especially will make use of. So that's our ministry resource.
Very good. Mm-hmm. I think we're to the point in the show where we have community feedback, if there is any.
And I'm just looking. Yes, there is. Let me share my screen one more time and point out that Christ in Media Institute has a blog going where they're writing about all kinds of things about using media in ministry. This is out of our sister synod, Evangelical Lutheran Synod from Bethany Lutheran College. And Dr. Tom Custer is the administrator behind Christ in Media and responsible for a lot of this interesting content. Caught my eye recently because they've been doing a series on virtual reality, something we talked about earlier in the show. And most recently published an article called A Virtual Baptism. And that really kind of made me wonder what was in this blog post. So I think you'll find it an interesting read, as I did. Talking about all different kinds of virtual reality. He's using a website called VR Scout to learn more about development on virtual reality, just to kind of explore what all is out there. And one of the things that came up with VR Scout was a church and a pastor. I want to say his name is DJ something. I'm sure it's right here in this article. Yeah. And they actually have done virtual baptism. Now, their thinking on baptism is probably a lot different than ours, where they're seeing it as a symbol or some kind of a declaration or turning point in someone's faith life. And funny, they actually said that they left the person underwater 10 minutes so they could fully enjoy the baptism experience or something like that. Not something you can do in real life, but in virtual reality, apparently that's possible. So an interesting read, and hearing Dr. Custer's take on it and learning more about virtual reality seems like a good idea, as the biggies like Apple are certainly paying attention to augmented reality and virtual reality. Just looking at what people are doing out there kind of opens up our thinking about possibilities and what the future might look like in ministry with these tools in place.
Very good. Sally, may I want to also mention how people can contribute and get their comments on the show?
That's a great idea, Martin. That just means I need to share my screen one more time for those that are watching video. I'm showing the Wells Tech website, wellstech.wells.net, where we post all of our episodes and all the links that we talk about during the show. You can find that in our show notes there. You can also find a great menu at the very top, a little small menu that has all the different social channels that we're a part of. I mentioned them earlier in the show. We have Google+, Facebook, Twitter. We're on Digo, where people can share links with us, Pinterest, Instagram. And then we have our own wiki. We have the ability to subscribe to the show on different podcast players. And we have the ability to email or voicemail Martin and I so that we can chime in on what your technology questions are, or so you can share your technology and ministry experiences. We'd love to hear from you. I think I failed to mention we have a Google group, so you can email the whole group and get some crowdsourced kind of responses to technology questions as well. That's really, really valuable, probably way more valuable than just Martin and I and our limited knowledge, but tapping into all the Wells Techers out there and asking your questions is a great way to go as well.
We'd love to hear from you as well. That really is kind of a highlight for Sally and I on the show. So take a couple minutes to share your thinking, thoughts, reactions. We would love to hear from you. Sally, video of the week.
Yep, and I guess this is pretty me-centric, but I came up with one called Top 5 Ways to Stay Safe on Public Wi-Fi, because I might be tapping into some public Wi-Fi as I journey down the road, and I'm sure everyone else does that at times as well. And it's reasonable to use it if you are very careful and proactive in the way that you use public Wi-Fi. So these are some great tips about using public Wi-Fi. So check it out. It's a 3-minute video, and you might learn something in the process.
Very good. Can be a scary place.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Coming up next week, summer's here. And those of you that are Wells Tech veterans know that means that the show morphs a little bit. Give us we try and shorten it up, keep it a little bit lighter. We know that maybe you don't have as much time or desire to dig as deeply into tech and ministry stuff, and we need a break as well. So we try and change things up, and very often that means we do a little reading, a little professional development, and that's what we're going to be doing this summer.
That's right. We have a book that we're going to explore. I have a copy right here. And I will just tease and say we're planning to eat some frogs this summer. So I'm excited because I will actually be in Milwaukee next week and able to record the podcast with you side by side, Martin. We're going to kick off our book discussion. And like I said, just be prepared to eat some frogs because we've got some frogs on the plate.
I can't wait. All right. Well, Sally, I think the first show from Mary D was a success. I would rate it an A+. Nice job. I think this thing's going to work.
Well, God willing, we're going to try it and make it work week to week. Yes.
Very good. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.